Mandy here with the Historic Interpretation team. Today I am here at the Landing Minnesota River Heritage Park. Now, with all of the beautiful sunshine we had last week and the rain we had this past weekend, you can see things are really starting to bloom. You might even say things are growing like weeds, which is funny because today we're going to be talking about a plant that often gets called a weed. That's right, today we're talking about dandelions. Now, we might consider them a weed when they pop up in our yards, but there's actually a lot of history behind growing and consuming dandelions in this country. Dandelions are a perennial plant, meaning they will grow back every year. Here in Minnesota, they become dormant in the cold winter months, but they're one of the first flowers to grow in the spring, making them important for pollinator species like the bees in the hive we have here at the Landing Minnesota River Heritage Park. Dandelions are native to Europe and Asia. They have been used by people for thousands of years. Some of the first recorded uses were by the Romans. In the 10th and 11th centuries, Arabian physicians recorded medical uses for dandelions. Dandelions are not native to North America. Instead, they were brought here by some of the very first European settlers. Some of the seeds might have been brought intentionally as part of a cargo on a ship for people to plant in their gardens when they arrived here. Some of the seeds might have just been mixed in with other seeds or with some of the soil that got brought with on those ships. Some of the seeds might even have been hitchhikers and have come over, stuck to people's clothing or shoes, and just sort of accidentally ended up here. Anyway, once dandelions were established, it was pretty hard to get rid of them. Once the dandelions get to this sort of puffy stage here, that means the seeds are ready to go and they spread very easily. One little puff and all of these seeds are gone. We can see they just float away. Those seeds will land in any sort of open or disturbed area and they'll grow really quickly. So we can see why dandelions have spread all across our continent, even though they're not a native species here. Many early European settlers would have grown dandelions in their gardens. It was considered an important part of many gardens because it was used to treat a variety of ailments. Anything from fever to boils to heartburn to liver problems, dandelion was a useful plant to have growing in your garden and to be able to make something to help your family with. Now, today a lot of those things can be debated about the effectiveness of dandelion, but some people do still like it for medicinal reasons. Over time, people learned that dandelions are not just good to make you feel better, but they're also good to add a little variety to your diet. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the ways we can eat dandelion. Now, before we start picking some dandelions to eat them, it's important that we know where our dandelions are coming from. We want to make sure we are only gathering dandelions from areas we know are not treated with pesticides or weed killers. We want to make sure we're safe when we're picking wild plants. So, once I know I'm in an okay area, I can start to look for some dandelions to add to my food. The first thing we're going to talk about is the leaves. Okay, so I found some dandelion plants here. And the first part I am going to test out today is the leaf of the plant. So the leaves sort of grow in these zigzaggy like shapes like this. They grow very low to the ground at the base of the plant. Now, you can eat the leaf as is. I could eat it for a snack right now if I'd like. You can also take it home and eat it as part of a salad or on a sandwich, or you can use it to cook with in any recipe that might require cooked spinach or cooked collard greens, something like that. Now, dandelion leaf tastes a little bit like arugula, and the longer you wait to pick them, the more bitter they get. Some people prefer to pick the leaves before you even have yellow flowers on your dandelion. Now, here's one of the dandelion plants that I've pulled. We've got the flowers up on top here, the leaves in the middle, and then the roots on the bottom. Now, this big long root here is called the taproot, and that's one of the things we're going to want from this plant today. So I'm going to take the taproot off by just kind of giving it a twist. I just want that thick brown part at the bottom there. We're going to save that and try and make some coffee substitute with it later on. Again, the leaves are the part that I can save and have in some salad or on a sandwich. And then today I'm also going to be saving the yellow petals from the flower. When it comes to eating dandelions for food, people both past and present have used dandelions for variety, decoration, and substitution. Eating a plant that grows all around you adds variety to your diet, but dandelions do a lot more. Besides substituting the leaves for other leafy green plants, people have substituted the roots for coffee. There are many examples in the past where goods like coffee are difficult to come by. Coffee is a labor-intensive product that travels thousands of miles to get to places like Minnesota. If supply lines are interrupted by scarcity or by conflict, sometimes those goods are unavailable. That doesn't change the fact that people might still want them, though, and they will always find another solution to get those goods. Drying and roasting the roots of a dandelion can produce a beverage that is similar in taste to coffee, although it's technically a tea the way it's made, and it doesn't have any caffeine, but the taste is pretty similar. Earlier, I mentioned gathering all of those big roots for an experiment, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to test out this historic recipe to find out if we really can make a coffee substitute from dried dandelion roots. This time we're taking advantage of the modern technologies and tools I have in my own home. We're not going to be recreating these on a wood-burning stove or anything, so we're going to make it a little bit easier by using my own oven. Once we have the dandelion roots all clean and dried off, no more soil on them, we need to chop them up into really nice small pieces. The first thing that we need to do to get the roots ready to make some coffee with them is to be able to dry them. Since we just picked them today, they've been in the ground, they're still really wet, there's a lot of water still inside the roots, so we need to be able to dry them out before we can roast them. So right now I'm just chopping up the roots into really nice fine little slices. I want them to be nice small little pieces like that. And then eventually they're going to go into the oven, and I'm going to just put the oven at a pretty low temperature for an hour or more and let them dry out before I roast them. When I roast them, I'll be increasing the temperature and roasting them for a little bit less time. The flower portion of a dandelion has a whole variety of uses as well. Whole flower heads have long been dipped in batter and fried for an extra tasty treat. The petals can be used in a variety of ways as well. By pulling petals from the plant, you're all ready to make all kinds of recipes. One historic tradition is to make a dandelion wine, which you start by pulling the petals from the plant and soaking them in water. Dandelion jam also begins that way. The petal-infused water would eventually be mixed with sugar and pectin to make a very sunny-colored jelly, allowing people to keep variety in their diets all year long. Finally, dandelion flowers can be used as decoration, especially in baking. You can add whole flowers to bread loaves for extra color or designs on top of your loaf for a little more decoration. Today, I am trying a cookie recipe using dandelion petals for some extra color. This exact recipe might not be historic, but shortbread cookies date back to the 12th century. So I'm going to be trying a shortbread cookie recipe using dandelion petals for some extra decoration. We'll see how it turns out. Now, earlier today I picked a whole bunch. I have a ton of flowers here right now. And the part we're going to be using for this recipe is the petals. So we're going to take all of our dandelion heads and start to pull the petals off of them. You can see we have a lot of the green part there on the head of the dandelion. We don't really want to keep that. We just want the yellow part. So if we just hold on to the yellow stuff, we can give it a good tug, and all of the little petals should come right out. Occasionally we get some green leaves there. We can just pick those out before we add them to our recipe. Well, I reached the end of my dandelion food adventure. So now it's time to test out a couple of the things I made. So first up is the dandelion shortbread cookies. You can see a bunch of little yellow splotches in there. That's all of those lovely dandelion petals that we pulled out of all the flowers. And they just kind of add a nice little bit of color to these cookies. Now, the real thing I was excited to test out is the substitute coffee made from dandelion roots. Now, in front of me, I have my usual regular coffee that I drink, just so I can compare it and see what I think. In the middle here, I have the coffee substitute I made using my drip coffee maker and the ground up dandelion roots. And then over here at this side is the dandelion roots that are made a little bit more like a tea, where it's the roasted roots but they're boiled with water. So we're going to do a little taste test and see what I think and see how they compare with my coffee.
So I'm going to start with the tea one first. It kind of tastes like coffee. It tastes like sort of weak coffee, but I would drink that in the mornings, I think. Try the drip coffee version. That one tastes more like coffee. It tastes kind of bitter, but it also does taste a little less acidic than coffee might. And I imagine if you're a cream and sugar kind of person in your coffee, it would probably taste exactly the same. I would be able to tell the difference when they're right in front of me like this, but I think if I was visiting someone's house and they served me one of these ones, I think I would probably just assume it's coffee. So dandelion roots do make a pretty passable substitute for coffee. Well, I hope you enjoyed exploring some dandelion history, and I hope you've discovered a couple tasty new recipes to try out for yourself.